Hi, I'm David from Levika Photography, and today, as a bunch of you requested, we're bringing the 5D Mark III out again. This time with the 16 to 35 millimeter F2.8 second generation lens, and I also brought out the A7R and the Comlight. I always want to say Omlight, it's Comlight, the Comlight EOS adapter, and we're going to shoot that on this lens on this body, this lens on the A7R, and this lens on the a6000, so you guys know exactly what it's like. So let's take a look. Okay, so the first up is the Canon 5D Mark III, and we're just doing this on center focus just to make sure that we get the fountain perfectly in focus here. And this is definitely at f5.6. And then we'll do it again at 24. Alright, and then all the way at 35. So at 35, at f5.6, we're at 1,000th of a second. And then 1500 at 24 millimeter at f5.6. And then our ultra wide was 1,000th of a second. Okay, so we've got our A7R, and we have the Comlight adapter attached to the 16 to 35 L2, and we're going to see how this works. Now on this camera, I have a feeling it's going to hunt a lot more, but we'll find out here in just a second. Okay, so we have 800. Let me see here. So it's f5.6 at 800, f5.6 at 640, and f5.6 at 640, which again tells me that the camera is metering a half a stop darker than this is. And the reason why they do that is the lack of the dynamic range of the sensor. It helps to keep the sky from blowing out. And right now we are shooting at the absolute worst time to take landscape photography. This is high noon, and we've got lots of contrast going on. And usually you want to wait for the golden hours. You know, first 2 hours of sunlight in the morning and the last 2 hours at the end of the day are the golden hours. But we're only doing this for testing purposes. Now on this body, the Comlight adapter does seem to hunt a lot at 16 millimeter. And it seemed to bounce around quite a bit, but once I got to 24, it seemed to lock on really quick, and at 35 it was also okay. So we'll see how those look. Now since we're here, it just so happens we got an a6000 with us, so let's throw this on here and see what happens. Yep. Okay, so I'm cranking this thing up to f5.6. We're just shooting on aperture priority. This is what we did on all of them. And we're going to see how this does throughout the stops. Now, it won't be able to go as wide, so the 16 will be like 24 and the 35 will be closer to 50, but it'll still give us a good idea of how good this lens works on this body with that adapter. Okay, so let's check this out here. And let me go into our flexible spot here and bring this down. Okay. Good for our confirmation. Okay, so that's at 16. Here's 24. Okay, and last but not least, there is 35. Ultra wide was 640 at f5.6, and then at 24 millimeter, or the equivalent of, which would be 40 millimeter, was at 800th of a second, and then in telephoto mode, that was at 1,000th of a second. Now let's just take a look at these images really quick. Now obviously you can see that the 5D Mark III, and this is with the metering both on matrix, both at 0. The 5D is definitely underexposing. It shot at 1,000th of a second, whereas A7R was at 6/40th of a second. Okay, so if we zoom in here, we'll look at the center first. And we'll try to get them to about the same size. There. Now you can obviously see that the A7R is going to have a lot more detail. It doesn't have an aliasing filter, and you know, we're talking about 36 megapixels versus 22, you know, so Canon people, don't get frustrated with me right now. You know, the 5D Mark III is well documented. It has a very thick anti-aliasing filter to be able to do better video, and you know, it's not going to have the same resolution. All we're doing is comparing full frame to full frame. Now the reason why I'm doing this test is because the 16 to 35-2 USM, the original version of this lens was terrible. So I wanted to revisit this lens and see if it's going to hold up for the new Canon 5DS coming out. So let's go ahead and take a look at the corners. Now this is f5.6, and obviously these are falling apart in the corners. Now on the Canon side, we're getting a lot of contrast. Let me get over to about the same spot, and it looks a lot blurrier. What you don't see over here is information in the shadows, and that's pretty well muted. And let's go to the same spot here, bring this up. There's the same papered window. You know, the information is just not there. The original version of this lens came out, it was, you know, more for event photographers wanting to go to wide to normal, and I think it actually changed over the years, and I'll show you why here in just a second. Okay, so this is at 24 millimeter, and again, very sharp in the center. Canon's still metering very dark and still at 0, and this is also at 1/1500th of a second on the Canon, and on the Sony 640th of a second, still the same. So for some reason the Canon decided to go even darker because we were going in. So, you know, again, this is a complaint about Canon's color accuracy, because it can't be if it's going to be metering this dark. Let's go ahead and look at the flowers here. So the detail is definitely there on the lens. Lens has just a really amazing sharp center. Now that we're zoomed in a little bit, how do the corners look? And it's still chunking out a little bit, but it's not too bad, and the center is just amazingly sharp. Okay, so let's zoom in here and take a look. Now the details zoomed in, this is where it actually gets kind of surprising. Zoomed in, the Canon gets a lot sharper, a lot sharper. Like now we've got something that's competing with the A7R as far as detail wise. Let me just zoom in one more click. And look at the base here. That just looks excellent. Again, it's a little dark. And on the Sony, we went to 800th of a second, and then the Canon is at 1,000th of a second. So detail-wise, let's look at the corners really quick. It's still falling apart just a little bit. Really quick here, let's back up on the Canon. Now, here's the elephant in the room. How does this look compared to the Sony a6000? Okay, so this is, I only did one image with the Sony a6000 because it zooms, since it's an APS-C size sensor, 16 is going to be 24 and 24 is going to be 36, so I just figured if we shot at 16 it would be right in the middle, and that could kind of give us a flavor of both. So this is the a6000 with the Canon lens on this side, and it's holding up remarkably well. All the information, well, it looks to be the same as the A7R. It kind of falls off a little bit. So, you know, detail wise, it seems to be, you know, they're both on par with each other. Again, this is metering, the a6000 is metering identical to the Canon lens. And let's take a look at the very top of the fountain just to see some detail right here. That way we can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at. get those to about the same size. And you know, detail-wise, the Canon is holding up very well, even though it's got that super mega thick anti-aliasing filter, especially in this shot. But there is a lot more information on the Sony a6000 in the shadows, a lot more. And if you just look underneath it, it's like, that is huge right there. If we look at the papered window, you can see how much information the Canon's losing. So, you know, it's just missing out in the shadows. Okay, so really quick now, let's get out of here. I'll go back to the A7R, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look at the lens to see how well it's going to hold up on the new 5DS. Here we go, F2.8, the A7R and the 5D Mark III. 16 millimeter. This is actually really nice. It's very low spherical distortion, not much going on there. As far as sharpness wise, it is very sharp in the center. It opens up really well, and I think it looks excellent in the center. Now the only problem is we've got some major vignetting going on, and if we go into the corners, obviously you can see without me even zooming in that far that we're falling apart, and that just doesn't look good at all. So alright, F2.8, Alright, so let's bounce ahead to F8. F8 technically is a lens's sweet spot. And this is where it really shines. I mean, it's extremely sharp in the center. Okay, so let's go ahead and check out the tile roof over here. Now on the Sony side, it's still falling apart a little bit. It's not nearly as good as the Canon side, and this could be a focusing issue. It could have been in the fact that we use an adapter, who knows. Somehow it's just a hair off, but it does have a few minor CAs, but I think it's a little bit of wiggleness, because if we go over to, you know, the upper corner here, let's check this out, upper corner, alright, there we go. You know, over here it holds up a lot better. Still a little bit of distortion going on, and I think this one might have been just a minor focus issue. So let's skip ahead here. Now notice at f16 the vignetting is pretty much gone. And we are past our sweet spot, and f16 drops 150 lines in resolution down to 2950. But it is clean side to side. I mean, really clean. It looks excellent on the Canon, and looks pretty good on the uncorrected A7R as well. Even the foreground, everything is so much more in focus. Now, keep in mind the Canon foreground is not going to be nearly as good because it doesn't have the dynamic range that the A7R does, and it can't see into the shadows very well. But overall, I think it looks really, really clean. And you know, this is a perfect example of the difference in resolution right here. There's just a lot more information, obviously, on the A7R than there is the 5D Mark III. But this says that this lens could be a contender. Oh, did I bounce ahead too far? I did. This lens could be a contender for the 5DS when it comes out. So, you know, this is the reason why I'm doing this. Does this lens have the resolution that it should to be able to work on that camera body? And I think it does. F22. I really like F22 on this lens. It is a completely usable f-stop. It's still not quite as sharp as the f16, but the thing is, everything is completely in focus. So you can totally use f22 on this lens at f16. You can use every f-stop really, really well. Now I believe that the original 16 to 35, okay, so this is 24 millimeter at f2.8. Notice minor vignetting, but still not too bad. Let's check out the center. So the original 16 to 35 L was crap, and I think what happened was they originally designed it for shooting events. Now surprisingly, at 24 millimeter, this is not very sharp. It falls off a little bit. It's very soft on the sides, and same with over here. So we'll skip ahead to f8. But I think that this lens originally was an event lens in the first design, and then they realized that everybody wanted to use it for architectural photography or landscape photography, so they had to switch it up in the second design, and it got a hell of a lot better. Okay, so this is really sharp right here. I mean, that looks really good. Corner-wise, everything is just holding together. Look at that on the A7R. It just looks phenomenal. Right here looks really well as well. Alright, so extremely sharp there. Now we're at f16 at 24 millimeter, and still really sharp. You know, you cannot complain about this at all. It's holding the detail. Nothing is going blotchy or bad. The resolution, again, is not as high, but it's very clean. And clean corners. Okay, so f22. Again, a completely usable f-stop. And you can see back here that our trees out here are getting a little softer, but not bad. Look at the detail retention in the bricks over here. I mean, that looks great. Okay, so let's look at 35 millimeter at f2.8. Now, again, we have vignetting, but what we don't have is any kind of lens distortion. It's not really perfectly flat field, but it is damn close. And you know, I've used a lot of 35 millimeters in my day, and usually all the way open they don't look this good. Very clean, corner to corner. You know, the A7R is uncorrected, so it's going to show a little bit more junk. But if we look over here, that just looks really nice. Now, the roof line, the tile roof line over here is really showing off the depth of field of the lens. So at f2.8, you still have a little bit of shallow depth of field, you know, and it should be actually shallower than this. But that looks really good. f8, the sweet spot. f8 is where it really comes together. Did I get to f8 here? There we go. Alright, so f8 is just insanely sharp. I mean, that is so good. So, you know, bottom line is this lens, and the corners are rock solid when you get up here. I mean, we'll go into the extreme corner up here and really check that out. But, you know, the bottom line with this lens is it is excellent. You know, this thing is going to be awesome on the 5DS when it comes out. I think it will hold up extremely well. As long as you shoot f8, then you should be taking some excellent images, because it holds up well on the A7R. And although it's not a cheap, viable solution for the A7R, and the Zeiss 16 to 35, in my opinion, is a little bit better lens, and actually so is the Sigma, but in general, for a Canon lens, L-glass, I mean, this thing is excellent. And, you know, you don't want to go off using other lenses on Canons, because on Canon bodies, you're just not going to get as good as autofocus. You know, Sony, you can pretty much get away with using Canon lenses or anything for the Sony Alpha mount that Tamron or Sigma ever made. Although Sigma does a lot better than Canon or Tamron on Sony bodies. Anyway, very usable. Alright, so let's bounce ahead to f16. f16 on this lens is just awesome all the way through, and this is my favorite f-stop on this lens. It's just so clean. You know, you don't have any weird chromatic aberrations. Everything is smooth. Love it. Okay, so anyway, there you guys go. I hope you enjoyed this review. Give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and otherwise I will talk to you guys later. You have a good day.